we're going to start the 13th parak. Wow. God willing, I'm halfway through my edition of the book, so that's good. I guess we're going to have to schedule assume when we finally get to the end. And I'm hoping everybody will be able to join us in person. Then we'll have the Sudas Mitzvah, celebrate this tremendous feat. Not enough people have studied this. Problem is, yes, of course, there are scholars who know this by heart, but the people don't realize that this is for every Jew to know, every Jew to learn, every Jew to practice, every Jew to teach to his child. And we look forward to having experience doing this. Let's talk about meal offerings, because we've still been talking about meal offerings, how to actually create them, how do you bake them. It is a positive commandment to make every single meal offering as it is described in the Torah. So what is that? There are many types of meal offerings. Rambam's going to start with the one that's unique for the Kohen Gadol. How do we make the Chavitei Kohen Gadol? That is, we've mentioned this before, it's a meal offering that the Kohen Gadol has to bring once a day. It comes out of his own pocket. Every Kohen has to bring a Mincha Chinuch, an initiation meal offering, the first day he serves in the temple. The Kohen Gadol brings such an offering also, but also every day he has to bring one, except it's not offered in one shot. It's some in the morning, some in the afternoon. And there's always a Kohen Gadol, or at least one Kohen Gadol. There's always one who's officiating, even if he's not present in the temple that day. He has to have someone bring it on his behalf. And like I said, it comes from his own funds. Mevi Isaron Shalem. So they bring a whole Isaron. We said an Isaron is basically 2.16 liters of flour. Remember that? That's also the Shir Challah. Now, how much does that weigh? That's basically about 2 kilos of flour. We said that the density of flour, I think, was, what was it? About 900 grams per liter, something like that, depending on the type of flour. And this, by the way, is the coarse flour, very coarse. That's why it's called solev. So it brings it. And then he's to divide it using the half isaron measure that's in the temple. There's one cup that's a full isaron, and then there's another cup used to measure a half isaron. Even though it's brought in halves, the isaron is to be divided in halves. It is not sanctified in halves. What does sanctifying mean? We said that it's when the meal offering is put into a sacred vessel. The Israelite brings his meal offering to the temple. It's, let's say, in a bag or whatever it is, in the container in which he had put it. A basket. Well, actually, it's not smart to put the type of basket they had. It's not good for holding flour. Perhaps in some earthenware jug, a bottle of some sort, whatever it is. In order to be sanctified ritually, it has to be put into one of the temple sacrificial vessels. That's the sanctification. So it basically has to first be put into the isaron, the vessel that's a full isaron size. That's its sanctification. The act of splitting it, taking this measuring cup, a chatzi isaron, which is basically, like you said, just more than a liter. That's how it measures it. So that's not an act of sanctification. The fact that it's put in the half into it's divided with this measuring device. And it comes with how much oil? 3 loaves of oil. A log is about 300 ml, at least according to the most lenient opinion. That's assuming a revi'it is 75 ml. Revi'it means a revi'it of this log. So 300 divided by 4 is 75. And the bigger opinion, the opinion that says that a revi'it is actually 86 ml, says that this log is about 345.6 ml. So that's a log. 3 logs basically come out to anywhere from 900 milliliters, or 9/10 of a liter, to 1.037 liters. Okay, for those keeping score at home. So 1 isaron with 3 logs. That's basically a liter of oil. And why is that important? Because it's unusual. It should be made with oil. It seems to be a person, when he brings a lamb as an offering, and also when lambs are normally made public burnt offerings in the temple, like every single day, there's 2 lambs. Each lamb has its own nesech brought with it, and its own libation, and every libation has oil. So the amount of oil that's supposed to be brought as part of the meal offering with the lamb is 3 loaves. 3 loaves of oil. Normally, the ratio when we deal with meal offering is one Yisarona flour gets a single log, not 3 logs. So basically, this meal offering of the Kohen Gadol has 3 times as much oil as we should have expected. Remember, one Yisarona flour is supposed to get just 1 log of oil. Instead, this Yisarona flour offered by the Kohen Gadol gets as much oil as a lamb gets, 3 logs. That's highly unusual, and yeah. So it's they derive this from this pasuk. The fact that the pasuk describing the oil of this korban is bashem te aseh. It should be made with oil. That's the same type of language used with regards to making a lamb into a sacrifice. So that's what the sages learned from this. Uvolel asoleth bashemen. So he is to mix the oil with the fine flour. Hold on 1 second. Oh, are we there? Please hold on. Testing. Okay, I think we're back. Okay. Sorry about that, technical difficulties. And v'choledo taberotchin. First, he mixes this coarse flour with the oil, and then he scours it with hot water, which means that he takes it in he takes boiling hot water. Normally, you don't need with boiling hot water. Why do you need that? If you were to, let's say, wanting to mix an actual dough, you don't use boiling water because then you won't be able to knead it with your hands. And also, if you were hoping that to, let's say, leaven it, which they're not trying to do in this particular case, if you use boiling water, that's going to kill the microorganisms. It's not going to work. In this case, he's not actually kneading it. This is first he's going to, I guess he's going to cool it down a little bit. The point is he mixes with oil and then pours on hot water. Okay, very, very hot water. Same way we make couscous, by the way. V'lash bikol chatzid saron. And then when it's time to knead it, he kneads from each isaron, each half of the isaron, sheish chalov. Nimtzu shtemes chalov. So he basically divides it in half, and then he makes it into each side into 6 loaves, a total of 12 loaves. V'adachat hayu na'asot. And really, he's supposed to do it one by one. He's going to explain. What does that mean? He divides up these 3 loaves of oil with the revi'it that's in the mikdash. Remember, there's 4 revi'it in each log, so this is 12 loaves. This is 12 revi'iyot. Okay, the 3 loaves of oil come out to just about a liter. So they divide it into 12, and that gives us 12 revi'iyot. So by the way, if you want to know how much is revi'is, basically take about a liter. This is a bottle of a liter. There's 12 revi'iyot in this bottle of grape juice. Let's say when it's full, and he takes that revi'it l'chol challah, revi'is for each loaf. V'ofeh challah me'at. First he bakes the challah a little bit. V'achar kach koleh otah al machavat b'shar revi'it Hashem shela. And then he, after baking it a little bit, he fries it or toasts it on the frying pan with the rest of its oil, the rest of revi'is that didn't get mixed into the kneading process. Ve'eno mevash lo harbe. He shouldn't cook it. In this case, bake it really, really intensely. Just a little bit in the oven, a little bit in the frying pan. Shnemar tufine. Tufine is actually a funny word. It's from the shoresh to bake, except the aleph doesn't appear here and the hay doesn't appear. The only letter of the shoresh that stays is the pei. Bein bashel v'na. It's basically half cooked, somewhere between fully cooked or fully baked in this case and raw. There's a Rashi here. It's important to read. According to the Rambam and Tosfos, this isaron of soleth is divided into 12 portions, right? And that's how they use to make the 12 challahs. Rashi says that instead, no, you're supposed to make one big dough and then divide it into 12. We got a question. Hold on. The link. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on 1 second. There's someone who's trying to join us and sort of locked out. I'm trying to think how we could fix this. No children's video games. Please give me your patience. Yeah. We just saw there's a machlokas here. Rambam's basically talking about needing 12 different doughs, dividing up the the materials to make 12 different doughs for 12 challahs. Rashi says no, one big act of kneading and then divide up the dough. Okay, I'd like to see who the halacha is going to follow when the Sanhedrin makes this decision. Remember, we keep talking about this. We'll live to see which halacha will be followed. Remember, they don't. If they're the Sanhedrin in the future, they're not necessarily bound by, let's say, decisions reached by the Rishonim or things that are still ambiguous in the times of Gemara. They're the Sanhedrin, so they decide. So they don't have to hold like Rashi or like Rambam, or they don't even have to pick sides. Maybe they could say that both are totally valid. Okay, so and the same thing applies to the other machlokas we saw between Rambam, the Chafetz Chaim, the Ravad. Perhaps even the conclusion, whichever opinion at which they settle, eventually will not match that which was historically done. But that's not something that we should worry about. Hold on 1 second, please. Man, good to see. Okay, I'm going to try sending this to the person. Okay, we should continue now. Then he's to divide each loaf into two. Estimating it doesn't. There's no exact way to take this thing. Perhaps there's no scale in which they could weigh the challah, so they could make sure they get exactly half on each side. But basically, that's what omed means, estimation. So there's 12 challahs. A half of each challah has to be offered in the morning, and a half in the afternoon. Erev in this case doesn't mean evening; it means the afternoon session in the temple. He takes these halves of loaves, and he then folds it over into a half. Basically, these look like pitas, and he folds them. And he keeps folding and eventually ripping them. Putate means he basically breaks into pieces. Patot ota pitim. Well, by the way, if you're looking at the shoresh, yes, this shoresh is from the word pita. The word pita comes from this. And the word path, the classic word for bread in the Mishneh and the Gemara, also comes from the shoresh, which is a biblical one. Okay, so he keeps breaking it into two, folding it, and turning it to two. And he brings these halves with half a kometz of levona. Remember, it's a meal offering, so it's supposed to come with levona. And normally we say a kometz of levona for the complete offering, but because he's dividing this in half in the morning, half in the afternoon, so each half comes with its half of the kometz of the levona. That's the frankincense in the morning. So half of the loaves that have now been basically folded and divided a few times into small pieces are offered in the morning with half the kometz of frankincense and the other half in the afternoon. In my time Mincha Chinuch, if it's a Mincha Chinuch, that means a first-time korban for the Kohen, the day he's serving. Eno chotza ela makriva kula kehat. He doesn't divide it so that half can be offered in the morning, half in the afternoon. He offers it entirely in one shot, im kometz levona, with a full kometz. That means a handful of frankincense. Doesn't have to divide that either. Ushtehen kalil leishin. Either way, either the chavitei kohen gadol or this minchat chinuch, both are entirely burned on the fire. To the exclusion of what? To the exclusion of a meal offering brought by an Israelite, which is usually consumed by the Kohanim, like we saw last week. A Kohen brings any type of burnt offering, so it's entirely burned. Let's see what the Ravad says in this halacha. Rambam said, every loaf is divided into two. Amar Avraham, Zo lo shamanu. Never heard of this. Ve'en la shoresh b'shum makom. There is no source for this. And shoresh means a root of this in any place in the Talmud. Sheyichalku kol chala v'chala. They have to divide up every single loaf. By the way, Rashi Tosfos also seem to hold this way. Ella l'sheish chaloth b'shacharit v'sheish bin harbayim. What it means, half in the morning, half in the afternoon, means 6 whole loaves, or 6 loaves are left to be offered in the morning, and 6 loaves left in the afternoon. But perhaps they are broken up at that point, folded. The point is, you're not supposed to. You don't have to break apart each loaf into 2 to offer half the loaf in the morning, half the loaf in the afternoon, as the Rambam described. The Torah not lahem midokadolot uktanot. The Torah gave them large measurements and small measurements. She'emodu behen kadei shelo yigra v'lo yosifu ashirim. This whole idea, remember, we saw that there's an isaron, half an isaron, and all sorts of ways of measuring. We saw in Klei HaMikdash how they measured the temple. So the temple is very exact. And there is a way to make sure that these two offerings are basically the same size, that the same amount of material went into them. At the beginning, divide the isaron exactly in half. Half here, half there. Half for the morning, half in the afternoon. And then there's a way to divide the oil. Half of 1.5 log go in the morning, 1.5 log in the afternoon. If you were first to bake all the chals and then start dividing them in half, it's very inexact. You wouldn't know if you're getting half in the morning, half the afternoon. Perhaps it's a 52% or 53% in the morning, and the rest in the afternoon. And yet Rambam says that, yeah, basically estimate it in about half. Take the loaf and divide it in half. If you were to use, let's say, an isaron to make 12 loaves, how much flour actually goes into each loaf? I would imagine it's about the size of a challah roll, the kind that we get in the bakeries before Shabbos. You have a bag with 6 challah rolls in it. So that's basically what we're talking about here. So how do you divide that exactly in half? So yeah, it's a very good question. It should be exact. And the way the Rambam is describing it seems to result in very inexact. There's a note over here that the Smog, the Sefer Chinuch, say like the Rambam, Rashi and Tosfos and the Ravid disagree. Okay, we just saw that. According to the Mishneh Melech, that's another one over here. Minchas Chinuch nosnin log shemen kechol menachos v'lo shlosha lugin k'minchas chavitin. We saw over here the Rambam is basically equating Minchas Chinuch and the Chavite Kohen Gadol that he brings every single day. We said that this Chavitin comes with 3 log of oil, and there are those who disagree. They say that the Minchas Chinuch has a standard amount of oil, not 3 log, but just 1 log. Okay. God willing, we'll also, even for this machlokas, we look forward to seeing something concerning it. We have a question come in. No, we'll answer that question afterwards. Okay. Let's see this. The Minchas Soles is one of the 5 ways an individual can bring his meal offering. 2 of which are baked in the oven. We're going to see that soon. 2 are fried, and this one seems to just be it's given to each Kohen without an act of cooking. And as we saw before, we saw this in the 10th parak, the Kohen can't say, you know what, I'll just take this whole bowl of soleth, whatever it is, for myself, and I'll let the other guy have a different mincha all to himself. No, each Kohen gets 1 kezayis of every single mincha that's consumable, that's offered in the temple that day. And in this case, it means every Kohen is going to get a spoonful of this mincha soleth, such that if you had 20 Kohanim on duty and 20 Israelites came and offered this korban, instead of each Kohen getting a full portion of his own bowl of solev, each Kohen would get 20 spoonfuls from 20 different offerings. By the way, this led to some issues there. So that's the halacha says that's what you're supposed to do. In the recent shir now, that for example, this is something that was a controversy, perhaps Second Temple times. Early Second Temple times, the Kohanim were actually offended by this. They didn't think this was a proper halacha, but this is the halacha. Now, how does it work? Mevi isarod soleth o kama esronoth. The person brings an isaron, 2.16 liters or so, or up to even more than that, of flour, or it could be even more, but that's the minimum. Gefinidro, according to what he promised to bring. Shemen aroila, and also oil in the right proportion. That is, for every isaron, once again, he brings a log. 2.16 liters of flour, 300 ml of oil, according to the most lenient opinion, perhaps more, but it has to be in this ratio. Umoded bi isaron shel mikdash, needs to measure it once again with the isaron of the temple, right? The special measuring device that has a sanctification capacity. V'notein shemen bakli, he puts some oil into this kli. V'achakach notein alav es soleth, and then he puts in this fine grade but coarse flour, means a grade A flour. V'achakach notein shemen acher ala soleth, then he puts more oil on top. Uvolel soleth bo, and he mixes the flour, the grain with it. V'achakach nodna b'chli sharef, and then he puts it into a service vessel. Mitzak l'tochan shemen, and then he pours more oil onto it. V'shemen shenatan tchila, im shemen abelila, im hashemen sheyatzak, the oil he put on at the beginning, and then the shemen with which he mixed it, and the shemen that he poured on at the end, hakol log lisaron. So that comes out to 1 log, 300 ml or so for each isaron of flour. Like you said before, shemen haroila, notein aleha levonota, and then he puts on the handful of frankincense, and that's it. Then it's offered. So the Rambam's going to pause here. He says that's just the preparation. So you have basically a bowl full of oily, coarse flour, that basically a farina mixed with oil that's not been cooked, and each Kohen is going to receive, after the Kohen performs the service, he's going to take out a handful of this, throw it on the altar, throw it on the fire, and he's going to do the same for the frankincense. And basically, you're going to have a full isaron of flour with 300 ml of oil, minus whatever was thrown onto the altar, and each Kohen's going to take that I guess his portion, and he's going to be responsible for somehow preparing it, cook it himself, which is a little bit difficult, but that's the way they used to do it. Do the Kohen have cooking facilities? Yes, we mentioned that in weeks previously. Well, like I said, the Rambam is going to discuss how to put it onto the fire, not in this halacha. Hold on, yeah. Mincha machavat marchesha kesad. What about the fried minachot? That's a machavat and marchesha. We said a machavat, if I'm not mistaken, is the shallow frying pan. Marchesha is a deep fryer. How does it work? Noten Hashem and bakli. He puts the oil into the kli. V'noten alav asoleth, then he puts on the flour. V'noten al asoleth shemen acher, and more oil put on top of the flour. Uvalel asoleth, and he mixes it around. V'achar kach lasha b'fo sharin, and then he kneads it with lukewarm water. He has to add water to it. Now, because he's adding water, it's possible that it could become leaven. So the point is, he's supposed to make sure it doesn't. And then he bakes it in the deep frying pan or the shallow frying pan as he had promised. But as if he had mentioned how to make this mincha, so he has to do it the way he said he was going to do it. And by the way, even though it's technically frying, it's called here once again afiyah. Even though Rambam says all these different ways are called afiyah or bishul, there he's using them synonymously. It's like on Shabbos. What's the af malacha on Shabbos? Afiyah, right? But bishul and tigun and other ways of cooking, those are told as just as usher. It's still just as prohibited on Shabbos, but it has a different name. It's a tolda. I remember speaking to Rabbi Rabinovich about this, the younger one, years ago in shul. It got very hot. Why? Because it was early in, actually it was late in Nisan, but it was a rainy Shabbos. And the facilities weren't, certainly there was basically a bomb shelter, so it wasn't the fancy synagogue they had at the time. And at that point, it started raining. And the problem with that was the people next to the window, they didn't want the water getting themselves, so they just basically closed the window. But what's the problem? It started getting very hot in there. But for some reason, the people who were at the window just didn't want to move so that air can be provided to everybody else in the synagogue, so they all had to suffer through this. So I went outside. I was staying outside near the door and was trying to pray along there under the canopy. It was still raining outside. Rabbi Rabinovich stood up at that point, and he asked me in English while I was praying outside, and I told him I told him that on Shabbos, bishul b'Shabbat asura. Right? You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. So he came back out after going in there. He says, it's not bishul, it's afiyah. Okay. So he says, I told him, yeah, you're saying the av malacha. I was using the more specific tolda they're on because it's getting humid in there. Okay. Back to this. It says that he prepares this, basically, he fries this mincha, ufoteto tapitim, and then he takes the product and he breaks it up into small pieces. Then he puts it into the service vessel. He pours onto it the remaining oil, and then he puts on the frankincense, and basically it's presented to the Kohen so he can take out the komets and levona and burn those on the altar. They have this process here in Eretz Yisrael. They make a dough that's very oily. They knead it with a lot of oil, and it's also deep fried, so that comes out really crispy and also very unhealthy. And that's similar to what they were doing in the temple. What was it that I remember someone showing them corn products? Basically, they feed the chicken corn its entire life. That's what it's fed: corn, corn, corn. And then when they shech the chicken, they prepare it. They want to turn it into schnitzel, and the breading of the schnitzel is basically made out of cornflakes, and they fry it in corn oil. So basically, when it ends up on your plate, it's basically chicken that has been basically fed on corn its entire life, coated with a solid form of corn in flakes that was basically cooked in corn oil. Okay, so it's all corn. Now, Chazal never even saw such a thing. We understand that this bread comes out quite oily. How do Kohanim eat such things all the time? The answer is they didn't. The Kohen is only serving the temple 2 weeks a year and on Chol Hamoed. So it's not like they eat this all the time. You could understand that it's not exactly the healthiest thing. We just saw that. And here the Rambam is going to say, what's the difference between these types of frying pans? Marcheshet yesh la safa. It has a lip, so it could be deep. And the dough that they fry in there ends up soft. Think like a jelly donut. You take a ball of dough and deep fried, it comes out, it's still soft. The oil doesn't have any place to go, so it's basically deep fried. Doesn't go anywhere. The flat frying pan ain't la safa. No lip. It's flat. It says the oil has place to go, so it's just sitting there in the surface, and basically the result is also flatter, so flat and crispy. So those are two different types of ways of preparing your fried mincha. Minchat mafe tenor ketzad. Hold on. Rashi says hard, not so that it'll be stay, but as a result. Okay, fine. They say, what's the point of this lip? Okay, on the oil on the frying pan. Okay, I want to see what it meant. Rashi meant that stays as a result. It was the same dough. Rashi claims it was the same dough. Rashi claims that they put in more oil, apparently. It has more oil in it, so that's why it would be softer. Okay, it wasn't necessarily the frying process. I want to see, has anybody ever experimented and done this? Anybody who makes menachos has seen this? I would like to try both Rashi and Rambam's ways. Okay. Minchat mafe tanur ketzad. What about the baked type of menachos? Im chaloti, if he's actually doing it loaves, not similar to our chalos, but a loaf of bread. Bolel asolith bashemen. He mixes the farina with oil. Vilash befo sharin, and then he kneads it with lukewarm water. Wilfan, he bakes it. Ufotate, and then he breaks into pieces. Vinotain bechli sharet, and he puts it into a service vessel. Vinotain alel levonata, and then he puts on its frankincense. Ve'ein ba yisikath shaman, but he doesn't pour any oil onto it. Shnemar chalot matzot below bashemen. It says they're loaves of unleavened bread, but they've already been mixed with oil. That means all the oil is used already in the kneading process. It's not that there's extra oil to put on afterwards. V'imr kikini, if it's supposed to be flatbreads, flat but soft, not hard. Okay. Lasha lasoleth befo sharin. He also, once again, kneads the soleth with lukewarm water. Umosheach et kikim bishman, and bishemen. Sorry, not bishman. Falling asleep here. And he anoints the flatbreads with oil afterwards. Nemar urkikim matzot mishuchim bashamin. These basically wafers are to be anointed with oil. Sometimes you anoint a person with oil. That's a Mashiach, a Kohen Gadol. He had the oil poured in his head. In this case, pour the oil in it and spread the oil on them. The oil is applied after the baking. Ve'ra'eli, it seems to me, shachar afia mosheachotam, that it's after the baking process. You could have said that first arrange these flatbreads and before sticking them into the oven, pour the oil on top of them. Okay. Ketzad moshchan, and how does he anoint them? If he log shemen l'chalisaron, he brings once again this ratio: a log of shemen, about 300 ml, for every isaron, which is about 2 liters. Umoshechan, and he pours on the oil. The choser moshchan, he pours it again. Ad sheyichle kol shemen shebelog, until he's out of oil. That is until the bread has absorbed all the oil. Wow, that's quite amazing. I like to see them do this. Oh, what just happened here? Okay, sorry about that. Internet connection running out. Let's see here. Kol arba menachoth elu afiyot kishofinotan ofin kol yisaron eser chaloth. All these menachos that are baked, the rikikin or just the loaves. So when they're baked, each yisaron makes 10 challahs. The Kohen Gadol's yisaron is divided into 12. This one is divided into 10. Vriba b'chaloth o chiser kshera. But if he actually made more challahs, he divided up wrong, made 11 or 9, it's still kosher. One less, a little bit less, a little bit more, it's still kosher. How do they break into pieces? He folds it into 2, and then he folds it again, so now it's in 4. Umavdil, and he breaks it up. Let's say it was a Kohen himself. A Kohen is not necessarily on duty today, but he brought a mincha. They don't have to break up these into pieces. Okay, mavdil. Sorry, he doesn't do this divine thing. Ufotate, and but he breaks it up. So what does it mean over here? Let me see here. I think there was a difference in Girsos over here. Yeah, my question was, I thought I saw a difference over here. You're not supposed to read it the way they have it over here with the semicolon. I think that's incorrect, and that's why it's misleading. You were supposed to read it as Eino Mavdil Futate. He does not break it up. He does not fold it over, and he does not break it up. It's left whole. You can read this as Eino Mavdil Ufotate, but he still breaks it up. That's the way I originally read it. I think this is wrong. By the way, I didn't put those dots in here. As you know, Maimonides didn't use periods, commas, or colons or semicolons. These were added by Machon Mamre, and that's why there's slight differences in different editions. Who chooses to, I guess, punctuate the Rambam? So I disagree with the punctuation here. I think that it's supposed to say Eino Mavdil Futate. He's not supposed to break it up. Chulan Pititatan Kazetin. When you do break up the menachos, they should be broken up into olive-size amounts. If they're too big or too small, it doesn't really matter. Let's say you did this challah. Is it basically each challah comes out to a kazayas size? I don't know about that. How big does it work? Well, the point is to break it up, and every mincha that's basically baked here, we saw the fried ones, and these 2 baked ones. What's actually presented to the kohanim to take a kmitza is now pieces, and then when the kohanim sit down to eat all this, they won't see a whole loaf. They'll just see pieces, and they have to basically take it with a spoon or whatever it is. Okay. Next halacha. Lo balal, lo patat, lo higish, lo mashachat rikikin kshera. These loaves, if he didn't mix them properly, he didn't break them up into little pieces, he didn't present it properly. Lo higish, in this case, we saw that's in the 12th parak over here. You go back to the 12th parak. It says here, what's the agasha? To know agasha b'marav keneged kudah shall carry to romit masmit ve'ein to know tnufa. They have to be officially brought to the west side, the southwest edge of the altar. That's where they're presented, and but they don't have to be waved. The point is, there has to be this process that they're actually brought there. They can't just stay in the temple courtyard and say, "Well, let the kohen. We're preparing them over here in the southeast side of the northeast side of the temple courtyard where the baking area is. We'll let the kohen come there and take a kometz and he'll walk it up to the mizbeach." No, they have to be brought. Each mincha, each grain offering has to be brought to its place next to the altar in order to consider it as having been offered. Okay, that's at least the chachila. And we didn't pour the oil onto rikikin; it's still kosher. Lo nemru called the elu ela mitzvah shkachi mitzvata. That's what you're supposed to do, but it's not like the Rambam would say elsewhere. Me'akev, it doesn't hold it back; it's still kosher. So here's how it works: once the mincha is prepared, what do the kohen do with it? Seder avada mincha ketzad. Mevi adam solet mitoch beito the kalatot shel kesef. He takes this flour from his house in these vessels. It's like a type of basket type of thing of silver or of gold. O shel shar mine matachot, whatever is metal. Kli shehu ra'ui l'kli sharet. It has to be something that could be fit to use in the temple. In the temple, they didn't use glass. They didn't use earthenware. They didn't use wicker baskets. They didn't use plastic. So it has to be something that could technically be used in the temple, made out of metal. Solet, like the first kind, the kind that's not baked into a loaf or into a flatbread or fried. No, not a kli sharet. He puts it into a service vessel. Makad shabich kli sharet. He puts it into the service vessel, and that's how it gets sanctified. If it's one that has to be baked, or in this case fried, it is to be baked there in the temple. It's supposed to be broken to pieces, as we have explained. And then those pieces are put into a different service vessel, or back in the same one. The point is they're back in a service vessel. And then he puts its oil upon it and its frankincense. He brings it to the Kohen. And the Kohen is the one who brings it to the presentation place at the southwest corner of the altar. Then he presents it at the southwest corner of the temple of the altar, and he's done. But now he has to do the act of kmitza. So the Rambam continues. So he pushes aside all of the frankincense to one side. And he's to stick his hand there and take his handful. We saw, is it 3 fingers full, like people traditionally know, or is it 4 fingers, like you could see in the commentaries of the Rambam, but not with the thumb over here? Okay, so he takes that amount from the area where it looks the oiliest. Okay, it looks like most of the oil has pooled over there. He's supposed to take his komets from its soleth and from its oil. And then this komets, this oily komets of flour, this handful of flour, that's put in a kli shareth, a different service vessel. And now it itself is sanctified in this vessel, the komets. So he's basically saw there's 3 times it's sanctified in vessel. The first is when it's first brought to the temple before it's processed. And once it's processed and put into pieces, it's then put into another vessel for the kohen to present. And now the komets is put in its own vessel. The komets if he were to divide up his komets into 2 different kelim, it's like half a komets in this kli and half a komets in that kli, it doesn't work. It's not holy. And then he's supposed to take out all of the frankincense also, scoop it up. Then he puts it onto the handful of flour that's in this third vessel. And then he brings it up to the mizbeach. And he salts it. There's salt waiting there, because every single sacrifice needs some salt. And then he puts it onto the fire from this service vessel. This is la fuke, to the exclusion of, let's say, you could have said the kohen should just take the komets, and while it's still in his hand, then he puts it directly onto the fire. No, it has to go into a kli first. And so the komets and levona have to end up in their own kli before the kohen puts them onto the fire. That's an essential act. And if it's the mincha of a kohen, let's say any of these kinds, Eno komets, there's no act of taking out a handful of the flour or of the frankincense. Ella notain melach al kula, he is to salt the entire thing. Umashlicha kol al gabei ha'ishim. Then the whole thing is put onto the fires at the top of the altar. It says v'chominchat kohen kalil tiyeh. It should be entirely burned. Any of that. Now, by the way, this is important. So important. We're going to see the salting every sacrifice. Normally, if a person or a tzibur community were to bring an animal sacrifice, so there's some wine offered, there's some meal offering brought with that also. So the meat of the animal is salted. And we've seen over here now that also menachos are salted in many cases. If there's someone who basically offered wine at the temple, just a libation, just wine, so technically speaking, that wine has to be salted before put into before it's poured on the altar as a libation. God willing, we'll see that halacha. So how do we do this act of kmitza, or how did the kohanim do it? So how do we do this? The way everybody does it. Poshet pas yado, he sticks in his hand the kometz and just pulls up with his fingers. Take it like anything. Well, children could do that. Kamatz brashe etzbotav. He just takes with the tips of his fingers like that, a little bit between the fingers. O minat stadim lo yaktir. He took it from the side. He shouldn't burn it. What does he mean by it stadim? I think that stadim is use his thumb. Yeah, that's what I think it means. Okay. Normally you're supposed to use the fingers to scoop. But let's say he used his thumb to do it. Use the opposable thumb. That's not what he's supposed to do. Okay. Kamatz we just read that. And he shouldn't burn this on the altar if he did it wrong. But if he did it this way, after the fact, So it is accepted by God. Bimosif bakomets. Let's say he took a little bit more than he was supposed to. Gon shehirchik etz botav kamatz raise up a sul. He spread out his fingers, so he took a lot. Okay. Rambam says a kometz is about 2 kazesim. It goes like that. A proper kometz, you get 2 kazesim worth. If he exaggerates his kometz, it's puzzle. Ein kometz pachot mi kishnei zaytim. There's no kometz that's less than 2 zaysim. By the way, that just Makbili and others point out shows you that the Rambam has no room for what basically happened in subsequent centuries in places where they didn't have much exposure to olives. They started measuring with eggs and different varieties of eggs and how much is the ratio olives to eggs. And then they come back there to only find olives, and they say, well, halachically speaking, whenever the halacha calls for an olive size, we have to basically use a much larger shiur than that. The joke is you open up the book, I forget which rabbi put it out in English and in Hebrew. It shows you pictures, full size to scale pictures of all different foodstuffs. How much is an olive's worth? And there you look under olives. How many olives does it take to get to a kazayas? 3 large olives is basically the volume of 1 ordinary olive. Go figure. So here the Rambam saying, yeah, a kometz is basically 2 olives worth. Umixada kometz ma'akeva kulo. You're missing a piece of the kometz. That is, it's less than 2 olives, so it's makiv, it's holding it back. And also can't have just the kometz of flour that was taken by the Kohen without the frankincense, or the frankincense without the kometz. He needs both of them. And also there has to be in the kometz, it has to be the flour and the oil. Can't just have one or the other. If he's missing some of the oil, so that's a problem. He has to have the whole thing. Okay. He has to make sure he has the right amount. There's no such thing as less than a log, 300 ml or so of oil per isaron. Why the Rambam mentioned this again, I don't know, because he said it quite a few times, and we saw it at least like 3 times in this parak. Let's go into the 14th parak unless we have questions. Sorry for the dryness of today's curriculum, but very important that we learn this. Let's see. A person can take on ceremonial vows. This is very important. We're going to get out of menachos now. We're going to talk about how a person gets himself into the situation that he's made a voluntary, it was a promise. It was completely voluntary. It was his choice to say this, to bring any type of sacrifice. Hold on 1 second. We have something coming in once again. No, I can't seem to fix it. I want to get this to be stabilized. Okay. Let's see this. Misnadev Adam v'noder ola ushlamim. A person could voluntarily take upon himself, he'll promise to bring a burnt offering or a peace offering. And also, he could take a vow or make a promise to bring one of the 5 types of menachos that can be brought. Beneder undava. We're going to see once again the distinction between these 2 things. He can choose to do that. And he could also choose just to say that it's a mincha of the nesachim, that is the kind that comes to the korban, or just on its own. Of any of those 3 types of minchas nesachim that we described, which is, by the way, what are they? They're for sheep or its own, and a ram, and a bull. Okay. Bull is bakar. Sometimes the person, why do you use all the masculine forms? Because generally speaking, if you're talking about burnt offering, it's all male. If it's a sin offering, so it could be a female also. But generally speaking, we talk about the males. It's like the refrain in the standard Ashkenazic form of prayer. That's hold on to this, especially in the coming program. It's very important to remember how much oil and how much flour and how much wine is given for each of these types of animals. So a person can decide that I'm going to give the mincha fit for a sheep. So he has to know. So that's an isaron, and whatever the ratio is. What is it? Yes, if it's isaron of flour and 3 loaves of oil, or sorry, no, that's not correct. Yeah. Sorry, it's an isaron of. We said this earlier. It's an isaron of flour for every lamb, and 3 loaves of oil, and 3 loaves of wine for each of those lambs also. So a lamb gets that, and for a ram, it's 2 esronot of flour, and I guess it's 4 log each of oil and wine. Okay, so we should know this by heart, God willing. And for a bull, it's actually a lot more. It's 3 esronot of flour and 6, or which would be a chatzi hahin. 6 logs, it's chatzi hahin, and each 6 loads are chatzi hahin of both oil and of flour and of wine. Okay, let's see here. And also a person could choose to bring a korban of wine. That's what he takes upon himself. Oh, shem b'fnei atzmo, or just oil. The Mishneh mentioned this. He's going to donate a bottle of fine oil to be used as sacrifice in the temple. Oh, levana b'fnei atzmo, or just the frankincense that can also be offered. Oh, eitzim l'ma'aracha, or he's just going to offer wood for the temple pyre. Mipnei shein korban, those are also like an offering. Shneimar korban ha'itzim. Why do you suddenly put in a vav over here? Because this is one of the few times in Tanakh where korban, which normally is a kamatz katan over here, has a kibbutz instead. Grammatically, like we said a few times before, kamatz katan and kibbutz are interchangeable. That's why in the hufal or hufal forms they interchange, and also when you take words of the geminated shorish like kaf lamed lamed or chet kuf kuf, and then you have a smichut of that like a chok or of kol. So the smichut form sometimes has a kibbutz and sometimes has a kamatz katan. And O's from the Shoresh Ayin Zayin. So there's a cholam there, but in all forms of smichut and possessive, sometimes it's a kamatz katan, sometimes it's a shiruk. I think also in Arabic, that's the pronunciation, as though it's with a kibbutz. Shnai mitnavdim od nodrim korban echad. So 2 can join in. It's a joint sacrifice, and whether it's 1 ola o shlamim, okay, they could do this with a burnt offering or a peace offering. It's on behalf of 2 people. Afil preda achat shel torim o b'nei ona. Let's say it's just a single unit. That's what a preda. Okay. Mevino ota b'shutafut. Normally birds are brought in pairs. So in this case, I think a preda is just one animal. Okay. Yeah, it means just one animal. Okay. It's one animal of the torim, but it's sort of misleading. Normally they're brought in pairs. So you would have said torim or b'nei ona. These are both plural forms. It means one pigeon dove, or one pigeon or one turtle dove. Turtle doves are usually the younger kind, and the pigeons are the adult kind. Just one that can be brought in tandem. And what's the chiddush of this? Because that's a really cheap korban. Aval hamincha, the meal offering, eina ba b'shutafut. The minimal meal offering, or if he even makes it larger, let's say it's 1 isaron of flour, that can't be brought in partnership. So they say, okay, we'll bring a whole maximum size 60 esronot of meal offering. No, even though everyone his own share is 30 esronot, which is nothing to sneeze at, still not good enough. It cannot be brought in tandem. Udvarim elu divrei kabbalahim. These are matters of tradition. Sometimes divrei kabbalah as allusions to in the pasuk, but it's certainly not explicit in the pasuk. Hiniach mincha l'shnei vanav. Let's say a man passed away. He had a mincha waiting around his house. He had 4 esronot of flour waiting for him to bring to the temple, but umeith, he passed away. Hare elu mivinota. So his 2 sons, his heirs, bring that mincha to the temple. It has to be brought to the temple. You can't say, well, now they're bringing in partnership. Each one has basically inherited half of it. No, it's not really their inheritance. It belongs to the temple already. So in that case, they have no choice. The father had been one person, and now this has to be brought. Even if he has 2 heirs, it's not considered a partnership korban. And let's see this third halacha. Hold on a second. Ezahu neder. We've mentioned this before. What's between a neder and a nedava? Well, the neder is when what's going on? Sorry about that. The neder and nedava. Homer alai ola. A person says, I take it upon myself to bring a burnt offering. Oh, hare alai shlamim. I take it upon myself to bring a peace offering to the temple. Oh, hare alai mincha. I take it upon myself to bring a meal offering to the temple. Oh, hare demei behema zo alai ola o shlamim. Or I take it upon myself to give the value of this particular animal to the temple towards a burnt offering or a peace offering. Zehu haneder. This is a neder. Neder it's the gavra. Looks at him. He has an obligation to somehow bring to the temple that which he said he would bring. He didn't say a specific animal. He just says, I got to bring an animal so I can make a burnt offering to God. I need to find some money so I could give an offering toward God. That's a neder. He says this particular animal or this particular animal's value should be a burnt offering or shlamim. Now it's in the cheftza, as they say. Oh, Ari Isarun Hazemincha. He says this Isarun of flour, this bag of flour, is to be a meal offering in the temple. Zohi Nidava. That's a donation. That's not a promise or a vow. That's a voluntary sacrifice. Okay, so that's the difference. One is it's all about himself. He has to somehow bring a korban that he described, or he has to bring this as a korban. So what's the nafkamina? Ma bein darmelin davot. So what's the consequence? Shanoder, a person made such a promise. Imi frish korbanov avado nigdav. If he had an animal in mind, he said, okay, this is the animal I'm going to use to fulfill my promise to God. And then something happened to it. It's gone. It's gotten stolen. It fell into the sea or into a volcano. Chayav ba'achor yuto ad she'akriv k'mosh nadar. He still has to somehow find a replacement for it and get and bring to God that which he promised until he's succeeded. Okay? He is responsible for it. That's an achrayus. Okay? Nadev, if he is just a mitnadev, he says this animal is to be a korban, or this value, this particular money, this bag of flour is to be a earth offering to God, and he said that. If then it's dead or it's gone lost. It's beyond his control. So now he's no longer obligated because this animal is supposed to be a korban. An act of God took it away from him, or something else beyond his control. So he's not required. So make sure when it comes time to start dedicating things to the temple, just know if you're taking a neder or a nedava, because there is going to be a nafkamina. And we're going to see more nafkaminas afterwards. Homer debei shor ze alai ola. Person says the value of this ox is I'm taking upon myself to bring as a burnt offering. Udmei bayit ze alai korban, or the value of this house. I also take it upon myself to offer it to the temple. Umeit ashor, and then this ox died, so now it has no value. V'nafal bayit, or this house is worthless because it, God willing, was a building in Gaza and it got flattened. Chayav l'shalem. So he still has to bring that value because at the time it had value. Amar harei alai olah al menat shelo etchaye bachruta. He says that I take upon myself to bring a burnt offering, but I will not be responsible for it. It's the type that if whatever I had the korban and went lost, and beyond my control, I can't offer it, so I shouldn't be held responsible to bring a replacement. And no chayav ba'achrita, because it's his stipulation, so he is not chayav in achrayas. Very interesting. Kvar bi'arnusha seb bait chutz lamikdash. We said earlier, when was the Rambam describing this? He was describing this, for example, in Bias Mikdash with regards to the psulim of Kohanim. The Rambam said that there are Kohanim who serve idols. You have a Kohen who served idols, so he can't be a Kohen anymore. He can't serve in the temple. You have a Kohen who actually became a priest in some idolatrous temple, so he also should not be offering korbanos anymore. And then he says that in history, there was sometimes a bias outside of the actual temple, a Jewish place of worship where they offered korbanos, but there was no avodah zarah there. It was it was l'shem shamayim. When has that happened in history? Well, it's happened a few times in history. There were two such major incidences in the times of Yeravam that basically was going on for well more than 2 centuries in the land of the 10 tribes. There was a Beth Bamoth in Bethel and a Beth Bamoth, a high place with the golden calf in Dan. And although at the beginning it says there that part of the insult was that not only was Yeravam trying to make a replacement for Jerusalem, he also replaced Levim the Kohanim. He said, now the priesthood is egalitarian. Anybody who wants to can join this. Unfortunately, it seems that there were a few examples of priests or Levites who did this. So the Rambam says that really, midrabanan, they shouldn't be serving temples, but it's not like they served as idols. And similarly, in Second Temple times, this was the case in for a while in Har Gerizim. The Tzedukim had a temple there, which was only clarified to be idolatrous sometime in the century after the Second Temple was destroyed. Similarly, in Egypt, in Heliopolis, there was the temple of Onias, and that stood since basically before Hanukkah times and was destroyed around shortly after the second temple was destroyed. That was a Jewish temple modeled after the one in Jerusalem, and it's well attested to in history. And apparently, there were Kohanim who had served there, and also as the prolific Rabbi Chaim Klein, RRCK, Rabbi Reuven Chaim Klein, has written about at Elephantine, the Elephant Island in the Nile, the more southern parts of the Nile. The Nile's quite wide there. There's an island there. There was a major Jewish settlement there in Second Temple times. They also had some sort of sacrificial place of worship. So the Rambam's mentioning this because you had people who were Kohanim, who served in or may have served in these places, but not to foreign gods. But still, it was a grave sin that they did. So they were basically disqualified from the priesthood. So now he's bringing this up again. And that's why is he doing this? Because he wants to bring a korban. Jewish people building a place of worship of God outside the temple is perfectly fine. That's called a synagogue. That's a good thing. And sometimes we build study houses. The second they put an altar there, and just once they put a little bit of incense, or they slaughter a bird and burn it on the altar. Well, not slaughter. They do malika, pop the head off of the bird. So they've turned that into a forbidden shrine. So that's not good. Eino kaved avodah zarah, but it's not like a place of idolatry. It's just it's a place of sin. A person says, take this vow. I take it upon myself to bring a korban in the temple. So he then ended up bringing it to the Beit Bamot of Yeruvam, one of his two places, or one of these two places in Egypt. He has not fulfilled his obligation. Okay, that should be obvious. He's supposed to bring it to the real temple. Okay. But let's say he actually took a vow. I take upon myself to bring a burnt offering in Beit Bamoth of Bethel, which is, by the way, nowadays it's just a few, less than an hour's drive from Jerusalem. So he might as well stay in Jerusalem. But the problem is he actually took a vow to bring his sacrifice in one of these alternate temples, these rival temples, these sinful places. Okay, so what did he do? If he brought it into the Beis Hamikdash, he's still as he's done right and he's fulfilled his promise. Oh, but his promise, he ended up going to the wrong place. So what? He kriva bota bait yatsa. But here's the chiddush: if he actually brought it in Beit El, he has fulfilled his obligation. He's sinned then he brought a korban outside the Beis Hamikdash, but at least he did what he promised to do. It's like a person who promises to, I don't know, jump up and down 3 times in the middle of this base medrash. So now that he's made a solemn promise to do so, he has to keep that promise. It doesn't mean he's offering actual sacrifice, but the point is that he said he was going to slaughter an animal in this particular place and do these acts, so he has to do that. Harehu kamishin nadar olah almanat shelo yeh chayav b'chruta. It's like a person who offered to took on upon himself to offer a burnt offering with no achrayus. He's not responsible for what happens to it. And here's also the point: vanush karet al haleata b'chutz. But also, we should add that yes, this person promised to bring a sacrifice in Beis Honyo, and he succeeded. He kept his promise. Good, he kept his promise. But he's also going to be hit with a count of excision for offering sacrifice outside the temple, which is nothing to sneeze at. So it's kind of interesting. Yes, he's fulfilled his promise. He's gotten out of it. Basically, he has two punishments or 2 sins hanging over his head. He made a promise to bring a burnt offering in Elephantine, so he's going to bring that burnt offering. At least he'll succeed in doing that, so he won't be hit with violating his promise, but he'll still be punished with kares for offering sacrifice outside the temple. The more details, God willing, we'll get to this. I think it's like the last parak over here, the 18th parak. We'll talk about these issues and the 19th parak. Why the Rambam brought up it here, I don't know why. I guess because it has to do with his promise. So it was basically his discretion to include this over here or over there. Yeah, very interesting. Allah. Hold on a second. There's a similar example over here. What about being a Nazir? A Nazir has actually put himself in an interesting situation. Assuming everything goes right, he doesn't get tamei by contact with the dead anytime in the middle of his tenure. So at the conclusion of his tenure, as part of his ritual to allow himself to go back to normal life, going near the dead, cutting his hair, drinking wine, he has to bring a series of korbanot. He says, I'm going to be a Nazir on condition that I can do my hair cutting. That is, the Nazir's first haircut is done in the temple normally. It's part of the process of bringing these three korbanot. In Gilach Sham Yatza. So if he did his whole sacrifice ritual of cutting his hair there when he was done being a Nazir in this rival temple, he has fulfilled his promise. Hareyu Kamisha Nadar Litzar Atzmo. Okay, this wasn't a real act of Nazirus. This was just a person who took upon himself prohibitions. Yes, he's going to avoid the dead. He's not going to drink wine. He's not going to cut his hair. He's going to slaughter a few animals. He succeeded in doing what he promised to do. It's like if I take a vow that I'm not going to wear shoes. So now that's a sacred vow. I really should not be wearing shoes for as long as I said I wouldn't wear shoes, for example. But this wasn't an act of Nazirus. Very interesting. He took upon himself what looks like a Nazirus, and it's supposed to conclude with offering sacrifice outside the temple. So yes, he did what he was supposed to do. He promised to subject himself to these extra rules for a while and concluded with a strange act of sacrifice for which he'll be hit with a count of kareth, but at least he kept his promise, so he's not going to be hit with a second sin. Basically, pick your poison. If he didn't keep his promise, so he's punished for not keeping his promise, but he's not hit with kareth for offering sacrifice outside the temple. So I don't know, maybe it's a question of what's worse. I don't know. Last halacha. Chatath Hasham einan ba'in ela al chet. Until this point, Ram was talking about burnt offerings and sin offerings. And he says that burnt offerings and peace offerings. The sin offerings and guilt offerings can only really be brought when a person's actually done something wrong. They can't voluntarily say, I'll bring a chatas, unless he has reason to believe he did something wrong. They can't be brought voluntarily through a promise or through a donation. A person does say, I take upon myself to bring sin offering, for lack of a better translation, or guilt offering. Oshar Amar, Harezu Chatat O Hasham, where he says about a particular animal, that sheep over there, that she-sheep, the female one, that's going to be my sin offering or my guilt offering, Lo Amar Klum. So it's like nothing. The animal's not sanctified. But if he was already obligated to bring a chatas or an asham, which by the way isn't everybody, there's a specific procedure how to become obligated to bring a chatat. Okay, he says that this animal is going to be my sin offering or my guilt offering. This money I have in my hand, this is going toward my sin offering or my guilt offering. Devarav kayamin. So that works. You say that if he had a reason to do this, he has a real sin he has to atone for. God willing, we should close with this prayer. We have a lot for which we need to atone. We learn regarding atonement that Yisurim atone. Sometimes there's a way to make up for a sacrifice. We study the laws of the sacrifices like we're doing now, and it's considered as though the sacrifice is offered. A person needs atonement, so what can he do? He could study the laws of the sacrifices, and that, in a certain measure, makes up for what he's lacking. But sometimes you need the act of kapara. You need an atonement. You need an atonement that involves an affliction. So we hope, for example, that by afflicting ourselves on fast days such as this one, Yom Kippur, a fast day is basically modeled after Yom Kippur. By afflicting ourselves, by avoiding basic human pleasures, necessary human pleasures, that should atone for us. That should be considered our sufferings. But sometimes, based in Shalmala, it's been decided that more suffering is necessary. And we have to understand that. God willing, we pray right now that instead of having to go through these sufferings, these Chevlei Mashiach, and of course we know that it's atoning for us, we hope and pray that if given the chance, instead we'd like to go through this process of actually bringing the Korbanot as we are supposed to, and that should atone for us. We could tell God, now we've made a mistake. Fatanu, Avinu Pashanu, we've realized this mistake. We're ready to offer the Korbanot as we are supposed to, and that should atone for our previous mistakes. God willing, we should see this speedily soon. Victory for Am Yisrael, rebuilding the temple, peace in our times. Amen.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.